somebody new signed up for my Space for Creativity starter kit. And they messaged me back saying, hey, I do sometimes get through the distractions and all the busyness of life and I get round to making some work, but it's the inner critic that holds me back and stops me. Can you make a video on that? So yeah, I can. They said they'd love to hear my perspective. So I've done something different. I've got ourselves a little deck and we've got some text to work through. So let's see how that goes. And I'd love to hear your feedback on it. Do you prefer me just talking off the cuff, or are you happy for me to share a slide? This isn't work. It's Friday night. I don't do this, but if I can, get through some of these points, maybe we can stay on track and I won't waffle too much. Love to hear your feedback on it then. You might know the inner critic in a few different guises. Okay? It speaks in different voices, and Stephen Pressfield, the entirety of the book, The War of Art, he talks about resistance. He talks about that force that's constantly keeping us from making work, whether it's distractions, whether it's busyness, whether it's all the life admin and things that we have to do. He calls it resistance. It's a great word. I mean, heavily loaded with all sorts of connotations. And I get that. And that's fine. I sometimes use it and I think it's great. But one thing that I know I've struggled with is the idea of perfectionism. So you might know that version of it, where you think you're trying to make something perfect and you're working towards it and working towards it. But I think we've been taught to seek perfection and guarantee outcomes. And I think that's part of our schooling. It's part of the system that we're brought up with. It's part of how we're often asked to work. But creative work inherently involves uncertainty. There's nothing that we know for sure. We're making this stuff up. We're solving problems as we go along. And I think between resistance and perfectionism, there's a lot to battle. But I think there's another piece. And I remember reading this a couple of years ago and just having in my mind maybe open. And it was a new idea to me. I don't know if it's going to be a new idea to you. I'd love to know. But Ira Glass identified another form. It's the gap between our taste, which is well defined, and our ability to actually produce something to that level. Let me read you the quote. Nobody tells people who are beginners, and I really wish somebody had told this to me, is that all of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste. But it's like there's a gap that for the first couple of years you're making stuff. What you're making isn't good. It's trying to be good. It has ambition to be good, but it's not quite that good. But your taste, that thing that got you into the game, your taste is still killer. And your taste is good enough that you can tell that what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you. What's the nature of the gap? What does that look like? And it's particularly painful place for beginners. And I think returners, if you've taken a break, if your career got in the way, or kids was so kind of full and life was amazing that you stepped away, I think we come back to it and we recognize that the quality of what we're making, we're not able to produce it at the level that we want. And part of the problem is our taste is constantly evolving and growing. And if you come back 6 months later, what might have been acceptable before, because you've watched new movies, read other books, you've listened to new output from your favorite musician, and they're evolving and growing, and so is your taste, that what you initially thought, oh, well, that'll do, or that's great, or I love it, you've evolved and it's different. The same thing, you might pick up a new tool, whether that's a camera, a synth, a drum machine, a different style of painting. Maybe you're writing in a new way and you're questioning all those things. They all come up as well. Rubin said, self-doubt lives in all of us. And while we may wish it's gone, it's there to serve us. So this isn't just about there's this gap, there's something deeper there, there's something more important. This is the self-critic as well as this gap and this idea. And like I said, our ability to recognize the quality develops way faster than our skills do. And there's so much work to get our skills up to where we want it to. And chances are, like, we're not even doing ourselves a favor, when we're in that space. It's really hard. It's really hard when we don't match up, when we listen back to the work or we reread it and it doesn't look or feel anything like what you're used to consuming and kind of watching, reading, listening to. James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, he actually said it's easier to recognize beauty than it is to create it. And I'd say on a absolutely significant scale easier. And I think we've got eyes and ears that do that all the time, and we're constantly looking and seeing, whereas our chances to create it are way more limited. The deep context for all of this conversation lies way more embedded in us than we can possibly think or imagine. Like, there's this evolutionary mechanism that's there to protect us. And Pressfield says, like, resistance is fear. It's like, it's biological. We're programmed to feel that reaction in our guts. And it's like tribal enforcement of obedience. We don't want to get thrown out of the tribe or the community. But we're trying something new and we're chancing something, and we're chancing rejection, particularly if we're going to put our art out into the world, and if we're going to put it on social media and it's going to get like thumbs ups and likes, or people are going to leave, awful comments that are going to hurt you. Like, our brains are wired to avoid those risks, and it's part of that fear of failure. But also the flip side of that is the fear of success. Sometimes, and they both can blow up in our face. And the next step is the ego protection. The ego fears change and it fears growth, and it's there to keep us in the same place and keep us safe. And it does a great job of doing that, but that doesn't help when you're trying to question the status quo and you're trying to push beyond the boundaries. So it's not just externally about the community, but it's internally about your own body trying to protect you. And we've also got this other idea of like industrial conditioning, like that we've been brainwashed and conditioned from an early age to follow recipes and to deliver outcomes, and we've been through school and maybe university and maybe we've worked in corporate roles and other places, and what we're doing is uncertain, but we've been taught to value certainty and guaranteed outcomes over our own meaningful journeys and exploration into something new and different, and then Rick Rubin also goes on and reminds us that like we are sensitive, like particularly as creatives and artists, that sensitivity that help refine our taste also makes us much more critical to like when that feedback is painful and it hurts. And Rubin's actual quote is, "If you see tremendous beauty or pain where others see nothing at all." So maybe you've expressed some stuff and people are like, tumbleweed? But it's how you're deeply wired together and fundamentally how you're able to connect beautiful things and see things that are amazing and awesome. And that's how you're made. And don't let that get you down. It's wonderful. In the midst of all this, I just want to offer you the chance to download my Space for Creativity starter kit. There's a digital detox video that's part of it, and there's a worksheet in there as well. There's other elements that I'll email you later. But if you sign up, there'll be a link in the pinned comment below and in the description. You'll be able to sign up there and start a journey to create some space. Get away from some of the digital distractions that are keeping you from your work. And hopefully that'll help you to start to get into a space where you're at least working, and then we'll deal with the inner critic. How do we start to overcome that inner critic? So a couple of different perspectives on how we can see this gap and the inner critic. It's not all bad. The gap can also be seen as a teacher. It's there to inform us. It's there to show us what's important. It's there to remind us that, like, there's a reason we feel this. There's a reason we are nudged in a direction. Ira Glass also says it's a necessary stage and everyone goes through it. And like I said earlier, like if you've taken a break and come back, or you're trying a new system or tool, it's there as well. There's actually an amazing video that only came out today or in the last day, and it's Brian Eno talking to Zane Lowe in his studio. I love what Brian has to say about the process. And I think it fits right in here around this necessary stage. We all go through it.
I think the misconceptions people have about artists is that artists walk around with sort of unrealized things in their head. And the process of being an artist is making those become real. But I don't really know any artists who work that way. You might have an idea of where you want to start, but the process of making something is the process of you starting to understand it as well. You know, that you find your way through making it, not you've got it all in your head. We're not architects, essentially. Architects have to plan it all in advance, because otherwise the things fall down. But in art, it doesn't matter if it all falls down.
The gap is also a motivation. It's to remind us that we're on the right track. It's there to go, this is what's important to you. I think as creatives, we're called to be different and unique, and it can be hard, and it can hurt when people don't like it. But also, it's important to know that we're going in the right direction, and this is what's pure and real and true for us. The gap is also a filter. It's a way for you to be able to go, this is good, and it has potential, and yes, maybe this is complete crap. You have no idea the amount of times I've shot entire videos, edited them, uploaded them to YouTube, hit play, and then gone, you know what, I can do better. And that's around this. I'm not where I want to be, but I've committed to put out 2 videos a week for at least the next couple of months. And some of them will be better than others, and some of them I'll pour more energy and effort into because I can, and I'm doing it because I need to do it, because I want to express, and I have a vision to help creative people to get back to their creativity, and I want to do that in the tens or hundreds of thousands, even millions of people. I'd love to help so many people to move this forward just by putting these videos out there. But I have had to use, my sense of, well, what would this amazing video by Peter McKinnon, or name anybody else, like even the one I just shared already, the Brian Eno video. How would I get to a place where I can make a video that is that good? But what I can do now is keep making them, keep listening to your feedback and your comments and wanting to improve it. And don't forget that expanding your taste is as important as chasing it. So reading, watching, listening, all of those things are as important to continue your journey and your growth as an artist and as a creative, to push yourself forward. And you have to make space for that. And that's why I'm suggesting like a digital detox, to spend less time scrolling, more time reading great books, more time listening to music, more time thinking, writing, processing, uncovering that stuff. It's really important. Okay, so let's understand a little bit about how this derails us as artists, because that can be a big problem. You've probably come across a number of these different symptoms. So complete paralysis, where we've made something or started to make something and we hear it, or we come back to it the next day and look at it and we're like, what was I thinking? I thought it was great when I went to bed, and now, and then you're down and you can't stand the sight of it, and you're frozen, and it just doesn't match your vision in any way. And that leads us to abandonment, like just this idea that like, where can I go? How can I improve? How can I get better? Like, it's nowhere near what I'm used to seeing or taking on. And of course, the reason there is because it's a comparison. It's a trap. Like, we consume so much media and so much content, and particularly content, like, if the algorithm is doing its job, it's showing us what we like, what we want to see more of, the artists, the creative spaces, which books to get, like, whatever. And it's really hard to pull apart like somebody's new material and not compare it to your own. But remember, they may be in the middle or even towards the end of their career. They might be releasing their 10th album and it's fantastic. But don't forget, everybody started with this gap. Everybody started at a place where they knew what good was and they did it anyway. And they put it out there. And they put it out there, and we know they put it out there because you've seen it. You've experienced it. And one I struggle with a lot is this idea of the perfectionism spiral, that endlessly revising and refining it and not thinking it's good enough to share. I particularly struggle with this with music. I don't know why, but I'm able to usually get to the end of a video and go, okay, it's good enough, put it up. Or when I'm editing photography, there's something in the process where I'm able to go, okay, look, that'll do for now. And I know we can come back and fix it later, but there's something about the music writing process that I really struggle with and continue to rework things. Or I get to that place where I just abandon them. And not just that, but like, we can also question our own personal identity, and just have a crisis of who we are. Am I really an artist? Am I really creative? Can I really call myself musician, photographer, videographer, filmmaker, writer, author, whatever your creative bent is? And like Ira Glass says like that in the same interview, like a lot of people, they quit and they give up. And it's that internal self-criticism. But the problem is avoiding it, ignoring it, actually just widens that gap. The gap gets further apart because we're not doing anything to help it out. Enough of the symptoms. Let's have a look at what we can do to bridge that gap. The main thing Ira Glass says is volume over perfection. Do a lot of work. Okay, a lot of work. Just keep going. Just putting it out there. And then we also need to focus on, like, we need to fall in love with the process and not just the outcome. Fall in love with the making, the tweaking. That's what the work is. That's where the work really comes in, is when you just get down and you do it and you find a way to coming back to it and come back to it and come back to it. And when we do that, it also fits the first point. We do a lot of work. Okay, that's there as well. One thing that I think is really helpful, and Rick Rubin talks about this a lot in his book, The Creative Act, is he says, like, lower the stakes and just play. Don't have a big end goal. Don't think of the finished product. Think about, what could I do in 30 minutes today? How could I play? How can you reduce the risks? Like, how can you just pull out a few things, from not play with everything, not invite the whole band over? I particularly like just taking one piece of music gear, plugging some headphones in, and maybe play it on the couch, maybe throw it in a bag and bring it on holiday with me, as opposed to trying to pull out everything. Because when you get everything, one, it slows down the process, and two, there's so many more choices you have to make. Certainly with technology, with camera gear or with new musical gear, I don't spend the time to learn it well enough to actually get proficient. And that causes a gap, because I'm watching people on YouTube use these tools and they're flying around and quickly able to do things, and every step I'm having to go, oh, how do I do that? Let me look in the manual. How do I do that? How do I do that? And that just saps your creativity. So learning your tools can also help in that process. So that's why just doing one thing and playing and building that muscle memory, so that play which is low stakes, means that you can move on and continue to make things. And it's beautiful. I think it's really important also to recognize there's gaps in everybody's work. Pick your favorite music artist and go back and listen to their first couple of releases, their first few albums, and listen to where they are now. Like I mentioned before, like I listen to music genres all over the place. Just a contemporary one. So if you listen to Billie Eilish singing Ocean Eyes, which she released probably nearly 10 years ago now, when you listen to her and Phineas make that and you listen to her new album, like there's a huge difference. Like you can hear the evolution, you know. And the same thing if you go back and listen to your older stuff, it's a great way to see how you've moved forward. And that's like the next point is create a gap portfolio. Regularly go back and listen to your stuff and you know, read what you've written. Like go back and explore it and go, I have moved, I have seen it. You know, the only person you can actually compete with is you. Like nobody else is on the same creative path or journey as you are. Nobody. They don't have the same influences, they don't have the same upbringing, they don't have the same view on the world or perspective. So it's really hard is probably not the right word. It's really unfair for you to compare yourself to somebody else because you have not had the same life and your creativity is completely different. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Let's keep going. We're bringing this in. We're going to land the plane, okay? So the gap isn't something to fear. It's a sign you're on the right path. Absolutely. It reminds you that you're here for something that you love, something you're passionate about. It's something that you've built this taste up over years of watching, reading, listening, exploring. All those things are so amazing. And there's a couple of simple things to do, and it's commit to the process and put in the work, and you will close the gap. And the things to do is to just keep moving forward, even when you're not feeling it. Just create it. Make space to do that. Space to engage those creative muscles and find that time to do it. And you will continue to close the gap. And particularly if you're prepared to look and see, where was I a little while ago? Where am I today? I love this quote from Rick Rubin. We're all different and we're all imperfect. And the imperfections are what makes each of us and our work interesting. So you're interesting and your work's interesting. Keep doing it. Keep putting it out there. The gap isn't just something to overcome. It's part of what makes your journey unique. And one day, when you look back at the work that once disappointed you, you might find something beautiful in its imperfections. The authentic record of an artist finding their way. Okay, thanks for sticking with this far. Your homework is to go and watch the rest of that Brian Eno and Zane Lowe interview. It's brilliant. And if not, the next video that YouTube's going to recommend will be tailored for you. So this is my next video. Give it a look. And like I said, the link's in the description for the Creative Starter Kit. Jump in there and see how you can reignite your creativity in your life. Okay, until next time. Bye.